Welcome to Tippcast by the Nenagh Guardian. Hello and welcome to Tippcast here at the Nenagh Guardian. Myself, Shane Stapleton, and sports editor Shane Brophy here. We had the Tipperary Senior Hurling Championship Semi-Finals at the weekend. We had them at all the different levels. We're going to get through them as we go here. But by God, we had people coming at us straight away on the final whistle at Temple Stadium. You'd swear we'd said Thurles are gone or never coming back. Like we both did tip Kiladangan, but I remember specifically saying I think there'd be a puck of a ball in it. But that's not to take away from how excellent Thurles were. Geez, they really did answer a lot of the questions we had.
Oh, they did, and like that was it. And I think like nobody was dumbing down Thurles. Like they've been very good all year, but we were pointing to the fact that apart from Loughmore in the mid-final, I wasn't sure who they had beaten. Like again, it's not dumbing down any of the teams they had, but I think if you look at Drummond Inch and Clonalty, they're not the team as they were a few years ago. That they have gone backwards a small bit. I think they've always had Upper Church's number, so there was nothing new there, and they demolished Anacarty, so like which we would always expect them to do. So look, this was the real test of Thurles, and look, we saw the reaction at the final whistle. What it meant, I think, to the players and the management, they knew how big it was because I think they weren't sure where they stood. They knew that they had to beat one of the contenders, and I don't think they had played a contender apart from Loughmore in the mid-final so far. And look, they did that, and I think they did that more deservingly, and I think more than the 2-point final margin suggests. I thought they were the better team for 3/4 of the match, but look, you got to hand it to Kiladangan. They probably hung in a game. They were probably maybe just off, slightly off for a lot of it. But look, Thurles got there for a finish, and I suppose when we look in depth to the match, I thought it was remarkable with both sides. Look, played a style of hurling we wouldn't have associated them for the past 10 years. It was old style, direct ball hurling, which the diehards love, like, but we don't probably see an awful lot of it. And I thought it was maybe to Kiladangan's detriment that they were, whether deliberately did that or sucked into it, I wasn't sure. Like, but it was a super game of hurling, two very competitive semi-finals, which we wanted, and look, we're going to have a good final inside the week. But it's good to know we've viewers in Thurles anyway. So
yeah, absolutely. But people, get your comments in. Let us know, who do you think was the player of the weekend? Anything that stood out for you? Performance of the weekend from whatever club. Let us know what you think. It was definitely something that stood out with the long ball that Thurles had. You know, we had Owen Brislan on last week. We were talking all about it, and the question of did Thurles have the ball winners? That was something that came up time and time again to me now, and I'd love to know what you think on this. When you look at the half-forward line that started for Thurles, and obviously there's a bit of moving around and all that kind of stuff, there was a half-forward line that included Dara Stakeham, Conor Stakeham, and Aidan McCormick. Now, they're three lads of a size profile that obviously isn't 6'2", 15 stone type guys. So you're not going to go long all day on those lads. But what they did do is they went long on Pa Burke inside, obviously a physical player, especially against most cornerbacks at club level, because they're generally more the 5'9", slimmer type affair, which is what we saw with Kiladangan. Dennis Maher, who's a huge man, even at inter-county level, he was a big man. And then Paddy Creedon, a common county player perhaps, and he's a big physical guy who will run at you. So they actually bypassed their own half-forward line a lot of the time with the long ball and went long onto the men inside. And the difference is they weren't hitting long on top of Paddy Maher, you know, which is what Kiladangan were doing. And, you know, to be honest, for a finish, I was nearly pulling my hair out looking at what Kiladangan were doing. But Thurles answered the question with do they have the men to win the long ball by hitting it into the men who actually thrive in those situations.
Yeah, look, it just I suppose we were up to last year. I suppose maybe for the previous 10 years, like Thurles were such an efficient team with the use of the ball, and it was get on the ball, get it to the man in space, off the ball runners, precision ball into the corners or lads on the move. But like this was completely new style of hurling. That this was old school Tipperary hurling. Get it and drive it in long. You have two big men in the full forward line. Like I don't think you couldn't say they overly bypassed their half forward line. I thought Conor Stakeham was very, very good. Dara Stakeham, for a slight guy at 19 years of age, I thought he was very, very busy in the half forward line.
I just mean with the long ball now. Those lads were all involved and they all scored from play, but just with the long ball, it seemed to go inside.
They did, and I suppose look, Thurles looked at and the fact that, like, okay, Dara Flannery and Fergal Hayes are very, very good cornerbacks for Kiladangan, but they're slight. And I'm a big fan of Dara Flannery's. I think he's one of those that is worth having a look at with Tipperary. He's young. If he gets a bit of strength and condition into him, he'll fill out, and I think he'll be a very, very effective cornerback. But like he found Paddy Creedon a very, very tough nut there last Saturday. I thought it was a terrific battle between the two of them. And Creedon eventually won it, but there was a couple of times Flannery came out and he never shied away from it. He was never looking to maybe, God, I have to stand back here and stand goal side and make sure he's not going to get around me. But he did well. Like I thought, I'm a big fan of James Quigley's. I haven't seen James Quigley under as much pressure as he's a full back as he was from Dennis Maher. Like we all know how good Dennis can be when, I suppose the game is played to his strengths, and his is get the ball into me long, I'll win it, I'll do something myself, or look, now I have Pat Burke around me, I have Paddy Creedon who can score 5 points to play around me or score heavily, and it was maybe just was the new management team, Brendan Carroll and Dowling came in there and just said, look, this is what suits us. We'll go back to basics here. And look, we can't be looking too far ahead because Thurles haven't won the county final yet. But you could argue that this style of hurling sets Thurles better up to, if they do win, to have an assault on a Munster and All-Ireland title. Because we did think when the ground got slow in the previous vintage of this team, where they were a very, very slick hurling team, that's where they came unstuck when we expected them to win. So like you think of when the pitches get slower in December and January, if they're still in it, look, I'm not saying they're definitely going to win the county final, but you definitely think it's a style of hurling that's better set up for winter hurling.
But then the question is, how will they do on, assuming they win again?
Yeah.
On dirtier pitches than Semple, because you could be dragged to any far-flung place to play a match, and like obviously that's later down the line.
Yeah.
But I think a couple of things went against Kiladangan too. Just to be fair to them, David Sweeney didn't look like he was 100% right starting in the half back.
No, he looked to be minding it. Even the first few balls, you knew he wasn't going at 100%.
Yeah, and they steadied down then when he obviously went off injured early enough. Jack Lennon came in, and I think a couple of times on the ball he didn't exactly do.
Yeah,
he wasn't able to deliver it the way he probably would have wanted to. I'm sure he was frustrated with that himself. But he's not the only one. I mean, Willie Connor's got 2 points, but I would expect him to be in the game a little bit more. Sean Hayes went on one great run in the first half, but was taken off very early. Billy Seymour scored a goal, but had a very bad afternoon of it. I think Paddy Maher completely bullied him out of it, and the same with Dan O'Mara. Paul Flynn again. I don't think he was 100%, but he scored 4 brilliant points,
and he missed I think he missed 3, if not 4 wides as well. Like he was very, very busy. Like I'm surprised that Pádraig Maher never picked up Paul Flynn. It looked like Paul Maher was detailed to take him on most of the match. Like so, it was Paddy went on Billy Seymour for a lot of it, but Billy went. I suppose you look at Willie Connors. I think it was the nature of the match where the midfield tended to be bypassed in a lot of the game. So look, it probably negated maybe his skill set. And I know Stephen Cahill and Michael Cahill, you'd say they won. They edged that midfield battle, but there wasn't an awful lot of ball. There was not an awful lot of ball in that middle third. I was surprised when I saw Sean Hayes being the first Kiladangan forward taken off, but we found out after Sean had been sick all week. And look, he probably had nothing left in the tank. And I did think, why would you take a guy off who could potentially pull you a goal out of nothing? But look, I explained that he had nothing more left to give. And I suppose when you break it down to its finer point, I think Thurles had 8 different scores and Kiladangan had 5. Thurles got 4 major scores out of their 6 forwards. Kiladangan only got 3. If Kiladangan maybe got one of Billy Seymour, Dan O'Mara, or Sean Hayes, if he was well enough to have had a big game, it could have been enough to swing the match back in their favour. It really was a game of fine margins.
Yeah, a couple of comments coming in already just about some of the guys who stood out at the weekend. Sean Ryan won 5 from Play Temple Derry. We'll talk about their match with Cash a little bit later on. Paul Tierney, credit to all the teams in the semi-finals. Some games, could John McGrath achieve both Hurling and Football Club Player of the Year? Former Tip player Dennis Maher stood out for me. Also adds in that Billy McCarthy back for Sars stood out. I thought Brian O'Mara, Holy Cross, was out injured for longer. How did he do? We'll go through all the games as we go along, and we'll take up that point about John McGrath. A question I'd have about Paddy and Ronan Maher, who were both excellent. I mean, they kind of played into Paddy's hands going long on top of him, and he just brought out an ocean of ball. Like, it was a fantastic performance. Ronan was good. They did seem to try and avoid him, which, you know, you obviously would like to do when you're
and those three, I think those was it 2 puck outs. He won one after another, and he got 1 point out of them. Like, that was that was a big sort of little micro, like just a big couple of minutes in the game when I suppose there was very, very little in it, and Thurles got something. Now, it's always maybe epitomised that Thurles, I say, bar that the second quarter when Kiladangan roared back into the game. If you were to break the match down into 4 quarters, Thurles won 3 of them, and Kiladangan won 1, and I suppose that essentially was probably the difference.
What about, like, Paddy and Ronan? Is there a better 3 and 6 in club hurling?
I don't think so. I think it's...
I mean, even Ballyhale have Joey Holden 3, very good player, Richie Reid, good player, but I don't think it's at the same level. Not quite the same level for me, anyway.
No, and I think I did think about 2 years ago. I said when Paddy hit his 30-31, I said the likelihood was if Paddy was going to extend his career with well, he's going to probably play with Thurles probably into his late 30s. Like, he just looks an absolute weapon of a specimen, physical specimen. Like, he's not going to go anywhere. But even expanding his career with Tip even into mid 30s, that you're probably looking to move into the full back line, like, and you probably think, oh, could Thurles do with him out at 7, and could they play somebody else at 3? But look, having himself and Ronan at 3 and 6, it's such a spine to have, like, and it just, and I suppose when you have probably players on the wing corners and the wings that probably don't have an awful lot of experience, so you need 2 guys you can really count to hang your hat on in 3 and 6, and both can do it. And look, they can flip around too. If Paddy maybe has difficulty, Ronan can go back inside, and Paddy could go at 6. Like, but it certainly seems to be something that they've hit on, that they're happier with Paddy at 3 and Ronan at 6.
Were you disappointed in Kiladangan's use of the ball? Like, the amount of times it was like high and hanging, and Dan O'Mara is trying to lean back into Paddy, which is just never going to work.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously Billy Seymour seemed to even get a little bit spooked at times when he was trying to shoot. Like, he's throwing it up, getting blocked down, like right in front of him. For a county panelist, you just don't expect that. But the ball in, it was never kind of hitting grass either side, so that you could turn and run at Paddy Maher, which you'd be thinking, if you're going to beat him at all, that might be your best chance. And now he might stop you anyway, but I'm just saying that would be a better chance than going 50-50.
Oh, definitely. I thought it was a big surprise. And maybe, I suppose, they were thinking, look, if we can, maybe they were hoping to get Dan O'Mara into the game. And look, he does like the long ball in, and like, he's a slight forward, but he's big and rangy, and he got very, very little on the day. I think you saw Joe Gallagher got 3 points, but he sort of got those points out on the wing. So when they did use the ball and took it away from the central positions, they got a bit of joy with Joe getting 3 points, and Brian Mallochny got his goal and 2, I think, out towards the corner side as well. So I think I don't think Kiladangan had any complaints. I was talking to a few of them coming out of the stadium, and I think they admitted themselves that they just didn't do quite enough, like, on the day. Like, look, that being said, look, they were great champions. That they went out. The Thurles, it was 2 injury time points that got the win for Thurles. Like, was it Aidan McCormick and then Paddy Creedon's fine from play? That was a class one to win in the counter attack, 65-yard point from play, like, on the coming out of your own defence when Kiladangan were trying to get an equaliser. So look, it was a game, I think, that really lived up to its billing. Like, I think like Loughmore have something to say about it, but I did think ahead of last weekend that they were the 2 best teams heading into the semi-finals, and after the weekend I still think they are, like, even though Loughmore still standing in Kiladangan or not.
Is Paddy Creedon the one player now that would have caught Colin Bonner's attention from this game that isn't already in there?
Oh, you'd have to think so. I don't know, he's not blessed with blinding pace, but look what inter-county hurling is going. You need a blend. You need and I'm sure if he got a good coach that could improve it. I think it's his footwork is something that he could really improve on. For a big guy, he's well built. He can take a score, but that's probably the one at the last area he probably has a bit of improvement on is getting his footwork up to probably where it needs to be for senior inter-county level. But he's 19 years of age. That can come on with next level coaching. Apart from that, you wouldn't say I think Paul Flynn did enough to deserve a proper run in the National League next year. Like I think he's 4 points from playing a county semi-final. What was it, 7 points from playing a county final last year? He just, for whatever reason, while he was there with Liam Sheedy and the last 2 years, he didn't seem to catch their eye or get their trust enough maybe to start in a lot of the bigger games. So like he's definitely another one I'd like to see get a good run in the league next year. I think Decky McGrath in Kiladangan, another one that he good nuggety wing back. Like he doesn't fear the battle. Dara Flannery, even though he came up probably second best to Paddy Creedon overall, what I've seen of him this year, definitely one that you could say maybe in the Cathal Barrett mold of really nuggety cornerbacks. Like so, like they're probably the three. Outside of that, I don't know, the Stephen Cahill, maybe Connor Stakela, maybe in terms of that sort of hard-working half forward. He got 2 points. He mightn't trouble the scoreboard an awful lot in games, but he'll do a lot of the dirty work and things like that. So look, I think in terms of those they would probably be maybe the 4 or 5 players that maybe not on the county panel that impressed at the weekend or in that game. Sorry.
It might be a while away for Billy McCarthy. I mean, he's suffered such horrible injuries, but irrespective of how far he gets back up the sort of food chain in terms of Tipperary hurling, it was brilliant just to see him back out in the field again.
Oh, absolutely. And like it's a small thing like that where you bring him on with 5 minutes to go and it got the reaction from the crowd. And I'm sure that even the players on the field fed off, and it might have been the 1 or 2% boost that maybe helped Thurles to get over the line. Like so, look, it's great. 14 months out after his second cruciate. Looks in decent nick. Like he's a well built chap. I'm sure. Look, in terms of speed work and in endurance work, there's probably an awful lot more that can be done in terms of getting him up to the next level. But look, I'm sure for his sake, getting back on the field was massive, and I'm sure he'll be hoping come county final day, he'll probably get 10 or 15 minutes that day and gradually build him back to full fitness.
Yeah, just a little segue onto other players that might be considered. James, 6,500. Could Sean McAdams have a run with Tip? Got the better of Brendan Maher twice and Jake Morris once. What more can he do compared to the likes of Dylan Quirk and Robert Byrne, who are on it already for years?
Definitely. Look, I suppose in fairness, Sean he was definitely out in Australia last year, if not the year before. So look, for him to come back this year and play as he did for Kilruane, look, he was very, very impressive. And look, he offers something different. He started that busybody sort of deep line centre forward midfielder. So look, I'm sure Colin Bonner and the selectors would have noted him down. Whether it all depends on what approach Tipperary want to take. And look, he's definitely worth a look. It's probably something maybe I think we discussed we were going to do maybe after the football final is over, maybe the week after, we'd probably try and put our team at the championship together at senior level, and maybe the 15 players not already on the senior panel that from the club championship that have stood out. So look, it's probably something for our viewers maybe to get thinking about. Probably looking at maybe 2 or 3 weeks time, we'll probably do that on Tippcast.
Yeah, and the old skin and hair might be flying when we try to do that. A final word then on Kiladangan. To be fair, like they've been so consistent over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah,
I think it's highly unlikely that they'll be going anywhere next year. Hopefully have David Sweeney at 100%. You'd imagine he will be. Paul Flynn would hopefully not be carrying an injury into the game like he was. You'd imagine they'll still be in the top 3 or 4 that will be looking to push for a county title again.
Oh yeah, definitely. And look, they'll be hoping to get. Billy Seymour didn't have his best year. Neither did Dan O'Mara. Like they're 2 guys you can get back to top level for. Like their second team is at Senior B. Like there's a couple of guys there. Maybe Shane Gleeson, Johnny Horn. There'll be Dara Culhan. Like there'll be lads that trying to push into that team over the next 12 months or so. Look, that they're not short on depth anyway. And look, I suppose we can't not leave the game. We look at Ronan Maher and Paddy, how good they were. I thought Alan Flynn again was superb. Like look, pound for pound, I think for the last 2 or 3 years he's been the best club hurler in the county. And look, I think we've seen it with Tipperary over the last 2 seasons how Liam Sheedy liked him, because look, if you asked him to do any job, he did it. Like he mightn't do the flashy things, but his work rate and appetite for the game is unreal. Like, and look, I just you cannot look back in that game and not mention his performance as well.
Yeah, he's such a tidy hurler too. I mean, that's to me, that's why he fits in so well at intercounty level. I think back at the Galway game last year, the Cork game, I'm talking about 2020, the winter championship that we had with Tipperary, and just his ability to get the ball out of dirty situations.
Yeah.
I think he's such a neat hurler.
Yeah.
But one thing I'd say that the Thurles against Kiladangan match was in no way as full of, I wouldn't say dirty hits, but heavy hits as Borris-Ileigh against Loughmore. And not only that, you could see there was a nice bit of agitation between the two sides from the get-go. Loughmore obviously won 118 to 115, going from 6 down early in the second half to being up by 5. And obviously Borris pulled it back a little bit late on. But, it was a tetchy game, wasn't it?
Yeah, you could, the first, there's a couple of challenges early on. They were a bit meaty, all right. And look, it was a difficult game for Peter Carroll to referee. I know he left both teams a little frustrated at times, but I suppose Kieran Maher sent off late on, probably out of frustration. Like, I suppose maybe John Ryan was lucky, and maybe in the first half that he wasn't maybe sent off. And I suppose you guys handed a lot more management that took him off at halftime. They saw maybe he was vulnerable to picking up a second yellow, and that he's taken off. But
he might have also been carrying a knock. That was said to me as well.
Yeah. Oh, that too. But look, I don't think I don't think it was up to the level of Saturday's semi-final, but it was no less engrossing. And I suppose the question I posed in my report starting off this week was, did Loughmore win it or did Borris-Ileigh lose it? And there's claims for both. Like, I'm erring on I'm sort of coming down on the side of Borris-Ileigh lost it, because I don't think Loughmore did anything special to come from behind. They didn't change their approach in any way. They didn't, bar John McGrath coming deep and the ball seemed to follow him around for about a 10-minute spell after the second water, wherever the ball was, he seemed to be near it. But it just surprised me how for what we've known of Borris-Ileigh under Johnny Kelly for the last 5 years, I thought it was a very callow way they exited the championship. Like, apart from Conor Kenny, nobody in the forward line really stood up maybe to win a hard ball when they were under pressure in that second half. And I know they were against the breeze, but I just thought, from a team that won Munster and got to an All-Ireland club final, that disappointed me. Now, I know they had their injury problems, but they were in defence. Like, they still had apart from Kevin Maher being suspended, they still had their best 6 forwards on the field. Like, and I suppose I thought it was very obvious. Like, Loughmore saw it. Like, as soon as every puck out seemed to go down on Conor Kenny in that second half, and look, it was easy for Loughmore to just we're just going to crowd out that area. He won one and ended up in a free, and I think Eddie Ryan, he missed that free subsequently. So, look, it was, from a Borris-Ileigh point, that disappointed. We look for Loughmore. Look, I think Loughmore, they're like the Kilkenny senior hurlers at their prime. You don't have them beaten until they're back on the bus going on the road home. Like, they're just incredible, and to do it without Brian McGrath as well. Like, I'm sure it was a very, very satisfying win for them.
Yeah, Mick Dempsey being involved, seeing as you mentioned Kilkenny. He's involved in both codes, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, no. In fairness, it's the same management manages both. So, like, it's all I think he was brought down for a reason, and it wasn't just hurling; it was for football, like, as well. So
yeah, I'm just looking at the match program here, and don't actually see his name mentioned on it, but he's certainly part of it.
No, I think he was only drafted in the last, maybe towards the end of the group stages. So look, obviously the Loughmore management are looking for any little edge they can do to find that extra 1 or 2% to get over the line. And look, they're going to need that and more in the final against Thurles. Because look, I suppose the one team that they found it difficult to beat over the years has been Thurles, and we know how good Thurles are in Semple Stadium. And look, potentially Loughmore are going to be in the final without Brian McGrath. I know they didn't rule him out of the final, so look, he's not going to probably play in the football semi this weekend, so he's an extra 2 weeks. It's either a broken thumb or a ligament injury in his thumb. I wasn't sure. I assume it's his catching hand. So you probably would maybe get away with it if it's your striking hand. You'll be able to strap it up and maybe strike through the ball. Like, but
do you know? I'd nearly say the opposite.
Yeah,
I mean, it really does depend. I mean, sometimes, and many lads have done this, you play a match or you finish a match with a broken hand or a broken thumb or whatever, and you play on and you don't notice it till after the game. So this talk of being a hard man, he played through this, that and the other, you just do not notice it. But to me, if you can hold the hurley fully in your hurling hand, most of the power comes through your the side that you're holding the hurley
Yeah.
with, and the other one is almost to steer it.
Hmm.
But like, I mean, even that can send shockwaves up the hand, and it can be
Yeah.
unbelievably painful. So
I was like, I suppose I was looking at the warm up. Also, I was at the team photograph, and he didn't tug, and he had gloves on his hands, so you couldn't see which hand it was actually with the injured one from the previous week. So, look, if it's a ligament thing, and if it's on his striking hand, you could probably see maybe some sort of a painkilling injection put in for 60 minutes, and maybe just to get him through it. Because look, they have ground to make up. They lost comprehensively to Thurles in the mid-final last in August, but as Frankie McGrath said to us afterwards, probably Thurles maybe were further down the road in terms of their preparation at that stage, and Frankie was saying that Loughmore were maybe doing a bit more football back at that stage. I suppose that they and maybe they were trying to get a lot of county lads back in the fold and getting up to speed. So, and I think maybe the slower ground probably plays into Loughmore's hands a small bit more as well. So, well, I think Thurles will be favourites. I think Loughmore have every chance in it as well. Like, I think it'll be a very, very good final. I suppose there'll be two very, very good finals that day. I know we talk about the arena later on. So I suppose the fact that it'll be a first double header in the stadium since COVID will be excellent. Hopefully we'll get a big crowd in there, and hopefully the weather will be good.
Yeah. Actually, Thurles missed 22 scoring chances. You know, that includes shots dropped short to the goalie, block downs, all that kind of stuff. Loughmore, they were far more economical. Over the course of the game, they only missed 10 chances. Borris-Ileigh missed 11 in the first half alone. So, you know, there was that good opportunity to kick on and be well ahead. As I said, like, they were up by 6 points, and like even early in the second half, I think it was still up to 6 points.
There were seven. I think there were 7 at around the 35th minute.
Was it even 7?
Yeah, 1-12 to 8. It was. What was it? 1-9 to 7 at half time, 5 points. And you said to yourself, how are Borris-Ileigh not further ahead?
Well, this is the thing.
And there were signs coming up to half time that Loughmore were getting a foothold. There were the first 15-20 minutes. They went direct with the ball, and they were getting absolutely nothing at their inside forward line. And you could see the game plan change after the water break. They started carrying the ball more. They started carrying into tackles. While they weren't scoring from play, they were drawing frees, and John was sticking them over. So you could see they were gradually turning the game to suit themselves. And the likes of Kieran Connolly really got into it. Like, he's another one I think it's sort of a Colin Bonner sort of player. I thought when the under 20s with Tip in 2020, he was a very, very effective file in the middle of the field. Very, very good. 2019, very, very good worker. Like, and I think he's definitely one that will be on the management's radar of possibly coming in and a fresh face going forward.
Yeah, the way he moves around reminds me of Niall O'Mara. Like, he even has an inter-county type frame. I was very impressed with him. Thought Willie Evanston was good. I'm going to make the case for Borris-Ileigh. So obviously, my two clubs, if I can put it that way, over the weekend, were both knocked out of county semi-finals. With Coola, I'd be coming down on it like a ton of bricks, despite having a good few lads out injured, lads with county experience and all that, because I just thought the performance was just way off it, and the setup was way off it, and even the selections were way off it. But with Borris-Ileigh, I'd be giving I'd be cutting them far more slack, you know. And Johnny Kelly has obviously done a very, very good job over the few years that he's been involved. But like, Kieran Cohen was out. I mean, Tommy Ryan Foot would have started midfield, but he had broken ribs during the week. He was able to come in for about 20-25 minutes, whatever it was. Kevin Maher being suspended. You're talking about the Tip under 20 centre back there.
Sean McCormick was out.
Sean McCormick was out with a groin injury. I ran into him in the coffee shop earlier that morning, asking him how he was. And then obviously Paddy, my brother, got injured after 15 minutes. And you have to take Jerry Kelly from the half forward line out to midfield. You're doing an awful lot of rejigging there.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just the deeper and deeper you're going into the panel, the harder it is to keep up the level of performance. So it just seemed to be, to me, as if Borris-Ileigh got to a really high level in the first half, but it just couldn't sustain it. And you need to be able to, you know, it's just tough when you're digging deep into the panel. And like, any one of those subs might have been able to come in and do really well if the other 14 starters are there. But when you're bringing in maybe 3 or 4 lads who are all not quite at the level of starting just at that particular time, it does take its toll a little. And that's not trying to be unfair on any one player, you know.
Oh no, definitely not. Look, I thought their performance in the first 15 minutes was their best period of hurling in the championship. There was an edge to them. They were really hungry for it. Like, James Devaney got a great goal. Conor Kenny was causing mayhem for every every Loughmore defender, like Jerry Kelly was very, very. No, that was Jerry Kelly's best performance
Yeah,
of
he's brilliant.
the year so far. Like really got through an awful lot of work. But as you say, look, while they blooded an awful lot of players earlier on the championship, like you probably in some you don't want to have to start them, but they had to do that. Like you were going into the likes of Bill O'Connell to come on off the bench. Like I don't think Bill O'Connell had a minute in the championship, and I didn't actually realize Bill O'Connell transferred from Loughmore to Borris-Ileigh at the start of the year. So like that was an interesting little subtext towards the end of the match. Like so, and God, if he had proved to be the match winner for Borris-Ileigh if they'd come back, like so. Look, I don't think Borris-Ileigh ever hit the heights of maybe 2 years ago. I thought there was too many games this year where they put in a good 15 minutes performance and then they went quiet and they came back for 10. There was just a little bit of an inconsistency there all year. I thought it was a strange tactical move when Noel McGrath went into the full forward line that they sent in Brendan after him. Like it took Brendan out of where he's best to be in the half back line midfield area. So and maybe his presence out there might have been able to stifle maybe John McGrath in that period in and around the water break where Loughmore really got some traction and powered home from there. Look, if Kieran McGrath doesn't miss that gilt edge goal chance and look, I suppose you could look at Loughmore had a player of Kieran McGrath's experience to come off the bench, which probably Borris-Ileigh didn't. Like he came on, should have got a goal, and he won a penalty as well, like so, which John McGrath took away. So look, as you say, Loughmore probably had a bit more on the bench that they could rely on and go to win the game. And look, as I say, those injuries probably ended up coming against Borris-Ileigh for a finish.
Yeah, and you're like John McGrath was exceptional. That's 5-18. He's after scoring from 2 games there, and a couple of points towards the latter end of the game when it mattered. I thought Noel McGrath was relatively quiet, but he got a nice point and set up 1 or 2 towards the end. Liam McGrath, I thought, was relatively quiet as well. Got a point, but he, on reflection, when I watched it a second time, he set up that goal chance for Kieran McGrath that he sent wide. I'd be quite disappointed if I was the Burrs full back line and goalkeeper about the penalty that was won, because a ball travels whatever it was 60 yards inside, and I know you like to try and be out in front of the forward, but you know, I mean, you can't let a lad catch a ball contested 8 yards from goal, and also even the keeper should be up contesting that. When a ball travels in that far and it's that close to the goal, I think a couple of, all these lads have played very well for Borris-Ileigh, and I don't like to be too critical, and the absences did catch up. But like things like that, I'm sure the players are looking at and they're frustrated themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure there's no doubt about it. It'd be interesting to see whether there was an element of maybe I wouldn't say an end of an era, like they're still a very, very good team, but maybe will Johnny Kelly come back? Will they go maybe a fresh management team next year? Maybe just to get a bit of a spark back in it again, a fresh voice in the dressing room. That's not to say like you get to a semi-final, you lose by 3 points, you haven't done an awful lot wrong. So it'd be interesting to see whether there might be a changing of the guard there. But like you still look at the age profile of the team, it's still very, very good. Like Brendan's for club level, 32, 33, he's still in his prime at that. And look, I'm sure they'll always have 1 or 2 more young players coming through the underage setup every year. So they'll hopefully get a few injuries sorted as well. So look, there's no doubt about it that they're definitely in the top 4 in the county, and they're not. If they get things motoring again next year, they won't be far away.
Yeah, I mean, like I look at the team and I go through it and I'm thinking like Seamus Burke is going to be a player that'll, like, he had a great battle with John McGrath, and I think it was only towards the end of the McGrath game that McGrath started to really influence it from play.
And that was when John went out the field, like, and I don't think Seamus ever followed him out. I think Seamus stayed inside. So
yeah, and then but like I think he's going to be an important player for years to come. Obviously, Dan McCormick is only something like 28. Ray McCormick, very feisty indeed throughout this game. He was. He's going to be there. Kevin Maher's obviously only a young player. Kieran Maher's still relatively young. So is Eddie Ryan is obviously very young, and James Devaney. So if I'm just talking about the younger players only that are going to be there for 6 or 7 years more. Well, sorry, in some cases 10 or 12 years more. Borris-Ileigh just always needs to keep bringing those players through.
And I think it probably says a lot about his effectiveness for Borris-Ileigh. When Borris-Ileigh win games or playing well, Niall Kenny is to the fore, and I think but Niall was very, very quiet on the day, and I suppose that didn't help Borris-Ileigh's ability. Maybe like they won very few scoreable frees in the attack and third, and he's very, very good at drawing them. Like, because he wins possession. He likes to run at defenders, and he tends to be either be pulled down or draw the foul. So I suppose from that point of view, Borris probably didn't get as much out of Niall Kenny as they would have been hoping for on the day.
Yeah, so that's the two county semi-finals. Let us know who you think is going to win the final, especially next week as well when we're previewing it. But let's talk about the intermediate, the Seamus O'Reen, and let's just start off with the semi-finals. Killinall beat St. Mary's 218-116, and Templederry. We'll start off with Templederry, putting up 423 against Cashel King Cormac's 111. That was a seriously heavy defeat, wasn't it?
Yeah, no. I was probably that game was Sunday. Yeah, sure. Yeah, where was that started at 1 o'clock? So when I arrived into Semple Stadium and checked the score, I was like, God Almighty, it's just Templederry are absolutely laying waste to Cashel here. Like, and I suppose it was probably the one aspect we wondered about Templederry was, would the pressure get to them in the semi-final? We knew they were good. Like, they had a heavy defeat against Borris-Ileigh in our quarter final, but that was 5 days after they beat Roscrea after extra time. So I was going to give them a pass there. Maybe mentally and physically they weren't right. They were missing 7 players against Silver Mines in a dead rubber game for them in the O'Reen group stage. So you give them a pass there. But in every game that's mattered this year, they have been very, very good. Like, and you said, how would they cope with the pressure? Jesus, they had the match won. Had the match won by the first water break, like, and Adrian Ryan, Sean Ryan, Garrod Ryan, Ian Murray, all their big players were firing. And I know people look and say Cashel finished with 13 men. Like, Devin Ryan wasn't sent off until injury time in the first half. I think there was 12 or 13 points in it at that stage, and then Owen Connolly was sent off late on in the second half. So look, the red cards were immaterial. Templederry were just on a different level to Cashel. I wasn't surprised Templederry won. I was surprised by the margin of victory, and I think that's a big setback for Cashel. Took a big step forward. I suppose maybe that bit of inexperience probably showed. Like, they have a lot of talented players, but they're young enough. Like, so maybe a bit of immaturity, maybe some of the red cards, and you'd hope that if I was to be Colin Bonner and you're looking at maybe Devin Ryan and Owen Connolly, maybe it's a small little black mark against them that if a game is going against you, you can't let the frustration get the better of you. You can't get sent off in those situations. Sometimes you gotta accept just the other team is better. Like, just don't. Like, now Devin Ryan and Owen Connolly are going to be suspended for the first round of next year's county championship. So that suspension is going to carry over. So potentially, if they get in a difficult group next year, it could be a game where it could cost them. It could be detrimental to them. But look, coming back to Templederry, look, I think it's going to be a brilliant final against Killinall. Like, that, I think if you at the start of the year, if you're picking the two best teams on paper, look to be Templederry and Killinall, and they're in the final. And both teams, particularly Killinall, I think produced their best performance outside of the South final against Mullinahone. This was their best performance in the county in the Seamus O'Reen Cup this year against St. Mary's. And look, Bubbles very, very quiet in the championship, but look, we've seen it with Tipperary. Bubbles is a big game player. Put him in an All-Ireland, put him in games that matter. Again, in National League matches, you'd be saying, what's Bubbles at here? But put him in big championship matches, he always performed, and he did it for Killinall last weekend. He was outstanding. Look, I think this, anybody making plans to go to the county final on Sunday week, get in for the first game too, because I think this will be an absolute belter.
Yeah, and so Killinall beat St. Mary's 218-116. Just to reflect on some of the scores for Templederry in the other game, Garrod Ryan won 3, Adrian Ryan won 5, Ian Murray scored 6, Pádraig O'Leary scored 1-2, and Sean Ryan scored 1-5. So you've lots of lads stepping up there. For Killinall, Bubbles scored 1-4. Trying to see who else got plenty of scores. Kieran O'Dwyer scored 6, a few frees there. Michael Doyle, he also scored 4. I wonder, in some ways, is that beating that Killinall took in the preliminary quarter-final of the senior county championship against Loughmore, has it stood to them in a way that it sort of reminded them what the standard actually is?
Quite possibly, but the more I know that they missed a good few chances in the first half of that game, maybe to make it a bit more competitive. But I don't think their eye was on the ball that night. I think they knew, look, it was great and all being in a preliminary quarter final, and if they won, they would have got to quarter final. Would they have won a Dan Breen championship? No, I don't think they. But I think the Oreen championship was their focus. Was they want to get up into the Dan Breen Cup proper next year and get into the group stages. And now they're one game away from it. And look, they're probably the team that everybody looks at, haven't been in the Oreen Cup for the last couple of years. And you have a team with Killian O'Dwyer, Joe O'Dwyer, John O'Dwyer, Kieran O'Dwyer, Jimmy Feehan, Paddy Feehan, Paddy Codd, like Owen Shaw, like loads of guys that have played with Tipperary in various grades over the years. But it just, maybe we're overhyping how good they were. Maybe we looked, but then you look at names, you think, how are they not gelling together properly as a team and being more consistent? But look, they're in the final now. They've against St. Mary's and I suppose against Gorton, who the two group games that mattered in the Oreen Cup, they won them with a few points. The youth that put their experience to the fore and got over the line. And look, I would think if both teams play to their potential in county final day, I think Templederry will win. But I think I think Killanall have probably more players with big game experience, probably overall with inter-county guys. But like I would think on form, Templederry's form is better. But like I think it's beautifully set up for a cracking final. Like I know we'll probably have a proper preview on it next week. I think this could be if we get a good weather day, this could be a high scoring cracker. Like it's just like both teams are probably stronger in their attacking half of the field. Like so.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the St. Mary's team here and seeing Seamus Kennedy named at full forward. He scored 1-3, won one of those from a penalty and a free. I'm thinking about, it's only a little footnote for the show today, but just you see this where lads are backs for the county and they're getting converted to forwards. Even Paddy Deegan with O'Loughlin Gales and they're into a county final as well. It's needs must. I mean, obviously, I'd say if ideally he'd be centre back there, but sometimes you just have to rejig things.
That's it. Like, and I would assume he might have been wearing 14. I saw St. Mary's against Laura in the first round, and while he was wearing 14 that day, he was effectively given a free role. He was with 2 minutes. At one stage he was full forward. 2 minutes later he was in the half forward line. 2 minutes later he's back in his own half back line winning the ball. I think I would assume maybe he was given that role again, and he was flittering in and out from full forward. But look, it's no harm to have that too. When we start to see the way maybe inter-county hurling is going, that maybe one, if not two, maybe big, good, strong ball winners in their forward line maybe coming back in vogue a small bit. Just guys that you could maybe stand up to the physical exchanges too. So look, if it's something that Colin Bonner and the selectors like about him, because it's worth having a look at him maybe in next year's National League. And I suppose you'd have to think that bar Sean Ryan gets injured over the next few weeks, he's got to be in the tip panel next year. Like you don't. I know people might say he's scoring all around him in the Oreen Cup, but you don't score the amount he's scoring from play, to not be a good forward. Like I still think he would score heavily against the Dan Breen teams. Like he's just putting up the big scores every day he goes out against any opposition that comes against him.
And this time 12 months, if they keep going the way they are and keep putting up score lines like 423, he'll be doing it against Dan Breen teams. In the intermediate semi-final, Kilsheal and Kilcash put up a good score line, 319 against Moneygall's 113, so they're through to the final. And Moyne Temple 2, he beat Knockavilla Kickham's 320 to 210 there. So neither of those games were particularly close.
No, I suppose Kilsheelan did get 2 late goals, probably to put a glass on their win over Moneygall, but they were comfortable winners. And in any case, they were probably still going to be winning by 6 or 7 points without the 2 late goals. But I know from talking to Liam Hogan, he was very, very impressed with Kilsheelan. Like, look, when you have a team with Paul Maher, Bill Maher, Mark Keogh in your team, and Barry Keogh, I saw him on the Tip under 20 footballers this year. I was very impressed with him. He seems to be an outstanding young hurler as well. So, I suppose you'd probably think they're more of a football club than hurling, but there's an awful lot of talented hurlers there. And look, they've been coming. They got to a quarter final, I think, 2 years ago, so they've come back. And McMine Temple 2, he got to the final last year. probably disappointed on the day against Gorton Hoop. So look, on paper, I suppose on form, we've got the two best teams in the intermediate championship in the final, and look, that's all you can ask for when you get to this stage of the competition. The same in the Seamus Arena. So look, I think it's further vindication that the Tipperary Club Championship is working, that in all the grades from 1, 2, 3, 4, that we're getting the best teams into the final. I think that final I think it's in Littleton on Saturday week, is going to be a belt or two. Probably more of the pressure, probably on Mine Temple too, because they've been the nearly men the last few years, while Kilsheelan is their first time final. So like that's I honest, you couldn't pick a winner at this stage. Like both teams look to be scoring heavily as well. Both teams are dual clubs as well, so they have good, big, strong guys that are able to use the ball maybe in heavy conditions if it's a wet final too. So I think it's going to be a very, very, very close game.
And another comment in here from Paul Tierney saying, really like Jack Taylor at wing back for mine. A few like Bo, Grode O'Connor, same club, surely considered county-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Grode O'Connor was on the extended Tipperary panel last year. I know that they while he maybe wasn't probably the one that maybe the under 20 or 21 player that caught the eye in those 2 seasons, he probably maybe if you're trying to mold the next Gerard Hegarty out of Tipperary, he's probably the next in line. Like so, and look, he could be a guy that maybe develops into a senior inter-county forward the older he gets. So, and like it'd be interesting to see whether Conor Bowe has done enough. I suppose he was probably the surprise omission maybe from the tip panel for the 2021 season. You think that he had maybe, in terms of what he was scoring for the previous 2 years for Tipperary, that we've done enough. Whether Colin Bonner and the management feel that he's had a good enough campaign maybe for the club to warrant. Look, you think he has all the ability to play senior inter-county. So I would have thought if the phone call comes, he will throw his lot in with the hurlers. And I couldn't say I wouldn't have seen enough of Jack Taylor to make a comment, but Paul seems to know his Mine Temple too. I'm sure I'd have no doubt Colin Bonner and his spies around the county are watching all the games, and I'm sure there'll be a few left field names that maybe the likes of you, me, or maybe the guys that would see a lot of games would think, okay, God, who's this guy, and is he deserving of a chance? I think Colin Bonner is going to scour the net. He's going to pull in maybe 3 or 4 players that maybe surprise some of us, but on form probably deserve a good look.
And as he knows now, he will be playing Watford the first day out up against Liam Cahill's team. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. Conor Bowe, when he's on form, reminds me, and this is obviously more watching the under-20s in the last few years, just reminds me of John McGrath. So I don't know if you would see it that way. But
there's sort of a lazy, languid style about him. But I would have seen him in the football for Tip last year. He definitely has a deceptively. I don't think he's deceptively long stride. Like if he gets a ball in half hour line, turns his man, he will be very, very hard to catch. I know he played a lot of his underage hurling in the corner, and we saw he's well able to take a score as well. So look, I'm sure if he does move to the hurlers, the 12 months with the footballers and the S&C and the physicality of that will have stood to him as well. So look, all wouldn't have been lost if he's maybe a year late to the senior panel than some people would have hoped.
So some other results from the hurling over the weekend. Intermediate hurling relegation final, Arravale Rovers beat Moyle Rovers 13 points to 9. Then the Junior A hurling championship semi-finals, Holy Cross Ballycal beat Nina Ayr Oak 118 to 213, and Skehina Rinky beat Galtee Rovers by 4 points, 115 to 111. Now I'm sure you probably haven't seen too much of those games with so many on, but for those clubs, important wins nonetheless.
Yeah, big win for Arravale. Like they've sort of had a rotten last 3 months in hurling and football. So to keep their intermediate hurling status, only having come up from Junior A last July, that was one of the delayed finals. That was a big thing for them. That's a big blow for Moyle Rovers to go back down to Junior A. Like you're going back down to the 4th grade in hurling in Tipperary, and like this is a club that won a county minor A hurling in 2014. Like I think that's, like you might say they're a football club first and foremost, but they have a lot of talent down there. So like that's a big blow to them. Holy Cross, probably not surprised to see them get to the Junior A final. They lost the Junior A final to Arravale in the summer. So look, form suggests they're they're back where they deserve in the final, and Skeheenarinky have been knocking on the door for a few years. I think they lost the county final a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. So, somebody might correct me on that. I think they bet Nina Rogue maybe in a quarter or semi-final a couple of years ago. So look, I think you have two clubs that are knocking on the door of going up to intermediate for a couple of years. Look, one team is going to be disappointed again. They're going to be stuck in Junior A. So, it's nice. I suppose Skeheenarinky will represent Tip in the Munster Junior Championship. We know that was they're a pure junior club, and maybe for their point of view, you'd love to see a club's first team moving up the rung of the ladder. But if Holy Cross move up, it just shows you like that they're with their first team and Dan Breen and second team in intermediate, that it shows the club going in the right direction.
Yeah. So the football championship is back on this weekend. Mile Rovers up against Loughmore. Geez, it just never stops for Loughmore, does it?
It doesn't, but I think I said it last week. I think they're starting to get a little pissed of, like, I know the Solid Met was last weekend was their 15th Sunday in a row, but Jesus, if I was a player for Loughmore, isn't that brilliant? Like, all you're doing is playing matches. You're probably doing a light training session during the week. All the heavy lifting is done. You're just making sure you're fresh and going again.
Unless you're a sub on both teams, or unless the injuries start to mount up.
Yeah. I think it's 10 first team players that cross over. There's to be the likes of Conor McGrath and Conor Ryan, and Owen Ryan maybe play football only. I think one of the goalkeeper doesn't. She's not in the hurling team, so they will be able to bring in a few fresh faces. I know Brian McGrath probably definitely won't play in this one. I still think they'll have enough to beat Mile Rovers. Mile Rovers, for all their inter-county talent, they're not a heavy scoring team. I still think Loughmore beat them comfortably enough in the semi-final. Not last year's semi-final, not probably on what scoreline suggests. I think Loughmore, now that they're in the hurling final, maybe the pressure might be off a small bit. I don't think they'll be looking ahead to Thurles Sarsfields. I might think, okay, we're already in a hurling final. The pressure maybe to get to a football final might not be as great, but it might help them in terms of the way they'll play with a bit more freedom, and that might be enough to get them over the line against Mile Rovers.
I presume most people will be looking at Clonmel Commercials keeping the run going by beating JK Brackens this weekend.
Yeah, I think they'll be warm favourites. But I suppose it's a repeat of the 2019 final, which Commercials won very, very comfortably. But I think there's a caveat for that. That final was played 6 days after Brackens won the Arena Cup final, and I'm sure there probably was a night, definitely one night of celebrations, maybe two. So it's hard not to think that wasn't a little bit of a distraction. And it was Bracken's first senior football final. There could have been an element of maybe a nervous that day too. So look, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Commercials will win, but Brackens will come in underdogs. The pressure will be slightly off, and I'm sure they'll love to see how close actually are we to Commercials. And look, they play a counter-attacking style of football. Like the hurlers that get men behind the ball and they like to move the ball up the field. I think Commercial probably have more attacking forward talent than Michael Quinnivan and Sean O'Connor and the guys like that. But I think with the match being played in Boherlahan, I think Brackens will definitely try and keep this game as tight as possible. They'll make sure they're defensively sound. I don't think it'll be high scoring. I think Commercials will get over the line eventually, but I think they'll have to earn this one. So I think they're two very, very. I think there'll be two very, very good semi-finals. And look, I think the weather forecast for the weekend is relatively decent. It'll be cold, it'll be dry, so hopefully it lends itself to two good games. Yeah,
there's a huge amount of football on all weekend. Might actually just quickly touch on the Camogie semi-finals from the weekend. Also in the senior, Drummond Inch beat Cashel King Cormac by 13 points to 1-5. Clonotty Rossmore edged out Aero Gannacarty 14 points to 1-9. In the intermediate semi-finals, Shannon Rovers beat Borris-Ileigh 14 points to 110. Nicole Walsh being missing there wasn't ideal for Borris. Knockavilla Kickhams, they beat Killarwan McDonough 16 points to 115 after extra time. Plenty of those games very close.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose I think I said it last week. The quality and the competitiveness of the Camogie Championships has really improved in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And we saw at a senior level, like it's a repeat of last year's final. I suppose Drummond Inch 5-point winners over Cashel. Cashel are like Drum, probably experience was the difference there. Like Cashel are a young up and coming team, so look, they have better days ahead of them. Clonolty probably turned the tide on Anacarty, who beat them in the group stage. And look, for Clonolty to get back to the final without Clodagh Quirk, who's injured, and Sarah Friday, who's gone abroad for a period of time, like that's a big win for them. But you just wonder, I think you give them every chance if you had those two players available for the final, whether they might be tempted to fly Sarah maybe back for the final to have her there. No, Clodagh with the cruciate, she won't be there, but it could be just one of those. Do you throw all your eggs into one basket and do what Peter Atchison did for Mile Rovers a few years ago, maybe fly somebody back, and maybe not the starter, but have somebody like that on the bench, and maybe might do something for you in the second half of a final if it's close. So I think that'll be a good final. And then intermediate, I think Kickens and Rovers have been the two best teams this year. Kickens only came up from Junior A, so to go all the way straight to the final was impressive. Rovers are a young team, and you probably think I know they were missing Celine Guinan for the game, but you think if Borris-Ileigh had Nicole Walsh, that probably would have been enough to get them over the line at her experience. Borris-Ileigh probably had more experience on the day, but Rovers edged through. But Rovers lost the final last year, so look, you have the up and coming team in Kickens against Rovers, who have been knocking on the door. So look, you're going to have two excellent finals that weekend, and I'm not going to leave out my own Laura. They got to the Junior B final now. They're probably on that weekend too. So I think, if I'm trying to tot up that they've lost 5, if not 6, Junior B finals in the last 10 years. Like every time they seem to get to a final, there's this young up and coming club with young players coming through that tends to beat them in finals. I think Kickham's beat them in one final. Kickham's are on the cusp of going senior, so it's it just shows you it's I think Killer One lost the semi-final to Kick, and they beat Laura in one of those finals too. So it just shows you it's if you don't strike all the irons hot, there's always somebody ready maybe to eclipse you the following year. So hopefully they do it at 5th or 6th time of asking.
And just then, finally, the Tipperary ladies football, the Senior A final is on this weekend. There's a huge amount of football on, but just even in the Senior A final, Brian Bruce against Aherlow would be one that stands out.
Yeah. I suppose when Aisling McCarthy and Aisling Maloney got injured, Aisling McCarthy went back to Australia. That hit Care's chances of maintaining their title. So I suppose you look at Aherlow, they have Emma Morrissey back from that broken ankle she's staying against Dublin in the National League. She's back and she's playing well. Caitlin and Anna Rose Kennedy, they'll be the key players for Aherlow. But you look at Brian Bruce, they've probably been the most consistent side in the championship so far this year, down from the Ballyluby, Father Sheehy's Newcastle area, the county, two very strong, traditional, strong men's and ladies football strongholds. So look, there'll be a cracking final. Probably maybe Aherlow, maybe marginal favourites, but look, it's a weekend of very, very good finals from Senior B down to Junior B as well. So look, I think no different than in Camogie, the quality and the structures put in ladies football over the last few years has been very, very good. And just to mention, last Saturday night they recorded a sort of up for the match style preview show, which is going out live on YouTube, I think, this Thursday night. So I think CK streaming the boys there in Clonakilty, Tomas Matthews and the boys have put together a show. It just shows you, and I give the Camogie board credit, their social media work this year has been excellent. And things like that, they're sort of, we all see in ladies in rugby and soccer as well, the real push into the ladies sport front and centre. But I would argue it's sort of been forced on us in some ways, rather than those sporting organisations really grabbing the thing by the scruff of their neck and pushing it in your face. And I think ladies football and Camogie and Tipperary associations are doing that. They're not waiting for maybe somebody to come and say, we're going to put on the matches for you, we're organising it ourselves and we're going to go do it. And I think you have to do that, and it's great to see, and we're seeing the benefits of it at the international soccer level, at the ladies getting their live internationals on the TV, which is great to see, and thankfully they're getting the results with it.
Absolutely. Okay, that's it for Tippcast this week. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, the whole lot, and we'll be back again next week. Thanks, Shane.
Yep, cheers.
Welcome to Tippcast by the Nina Guardian.